This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we'll go ahead with the lecture actually, and so we had covered up to the few of the up to here, uh, the biomechanics also we had also covered the nystagmus part. So this we have I will start from here I think. Semicircular canal stimulation and vestibulo-ocular reflex generation. So this is a very important aspect of why, because with the help of vestibulo-ocular reflex, you try to keep the image centered in the fovea. So these the peripheral sensor transmit motion to the brain through frequency coding, like FM band radio, how they transmit. Exactly like that only it is transmitted to the brain. And the normal resting transmission frequency is 90 spikes per second. And so that if the discharge rate increases to say 200 spikes per second, then you think the brain detects that right side or left side semicircular canal is stimulated. And if it comes down to 20 or 30, that indicates that that side semicircular canal is depressed, not stimulated, rather suppressed. So this is important. So we'll be talking about how the information from the movement of endolymph in the semicircular canal is carried all the way into the what you say the cerebellum as well as the cerebral cortex. Now, the polarization of hair cell in horizontal semicircular canal is such that deflection of stereocilia in the cupula towards the kinocilium, that is ampulopetal or utriculopetal flow, leads to depolarization. So, the kinocilium are arranged towards the utricular side. So, whenever the stereocilia bends towards the kinocilium, that is, when the flow of endolymph occurs towards the utricle, then the lateral semicircular canal gets stimulated. Any flow away from the utricle or ampulofugal or utriculofugal leads to hyperpolarization. But the reverse thing occurs in the uh, vertical canal, that is both the superior and the anterior semicircular sorry, the anterior and posterior semicircular canal, where the ampulofugal or utriculofugal stimulates or causes depolarization, and utriculopetal causes hyperpolarization. So, the one question which might be popping in your mind is why in one thing a ampulopetal flow will stimulate, and this is because of the orientation of the kinocilium and stereocilium. So that depends on that. If the kinocilium are oriented towards the or away from the ampulla, so obviously uh, when there occurs a bending of stereocilia towards the kinocilium, means the flow has to be ampulofugal, so that the stereocilia will bend towards the kinocilium. So it depends. It all is on the orientation. Okay. So when there occurs a depolarization, the activity of the primary apparent neuron increases. So this depolarization will increase the neural activity. So this the almost it is same as that of like how it occurs with hearing. So depolarization occurs, the calcium potassium channels they come in, then the glutamate is released and the neural activity starts. So deflection of stereocilia away from kinocilium, that is ampulofugal or utriculofugal, will result in hyperpolarization and decreased primary afferent neuron activity. So then the firing rate will come down, I told you, well below the baseline, that is to around 20 spike per second. So here you can see this is the kinocilia. The kinocilium is a true cilium having 9+2 configuration, and the stereocilia are, all these are the stereocilias. The stereocilias, they are not free, but rather they are connected to one another by known as tip links. And the stereocilia has actin filaments in it, and thereby what happens is that maintains the rigidity of the stereocilia. And these this row of stereocilia, they are connected to one another at the tip here, over here, and when the stereocilia bends towards the kinocilium, then that results in opening of the potassium channel, and the potassium comes into the, because what happens ki, this part is bathed in endolymph. So the endolymph has a good potassium, so immediately the potassium comes into the cell. Here you can see this is at the resting state. You can see the firing activity here well spaced out, and when the stereocilia bend towards the kinocilium, you see the firing rate has increased, become very fast. Okay, and this, when the stereocilia are deflected away from the kinocilium, then you can see the spacing has increased, so that indicates a hyperpolarization. So this frequency of firing is read by the brain, so that goes via the vestibular nerve and relays in the cerebellum as well as in the cerebral cortex, insular cortex. So they detect that one side of the vestibule, there is a increase in the rate of firing of the neurons, and on opposite side there is less firing of the neuron. That means one side of the vestibule is stimulated and the opposite side is depressed. So there, by that you can, the vestibulo-ocular reflex also works accordingly. So these are the two different type of cells, the type 1 and type 2 cell. Same as I told you in case of cochlea, the type 1 is a flash shape, and this is the whole afferent nuclei. You can see the neuron completely encircling it. This is the efferent one here. Here it is like a button and more cylindrical in shape. Now, the simplified principle of VOR generation, that is yaw plane rotation of horizontal semicircular canal, is as follows. Now, how the vestibulo-ocular reflex is generated? It's very important. If you have any doubt or at any point you don't follow, no, just ask me. Now, during head rest, I told you the hair cell in both the semicircular canal, they have a firing rate of 90 spikes per second. Now let us say the head is rotated to right. Now see, this is my right side. I will rotate the head to right. As I rotate the head to right, what happens? The endolymph fluid lags behind and moves relative to the left within each semicircular canal. Now see, when I am rotating the head to right now, the endolymph is static like this. So relatively when you move now, it looks like the endolymph is moving to the left because of inertia of rest. Am I clear? Hello? Hello? Can you hear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Am I clear that when you move the head to the right, the endolymph, because of inertia, seems to move to the left? Can you figure it out? Undergraduates, anyone? Any doubt? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Any undergraduate student, please respond.
Yes, sir.
And what you are
Yes, sir.
sleeping or what? 5 times I'm asking you, are you able to make it out or not? You should reply back immediately. Otherwise, how I will know? So as you rotate the head to the right like this, when I'm looking to my right side, there is a relative motion of the endolymph to the left. So it feels that the endolymph is moving to the left because of inertia of rest. So what happens on the cupula bends to left in the each canal. So as it moves to the left, so the cupula also bends to the left side in each canal. So in the right semicircular canal, the stereocilia bends towards the kinocilium, and in the left semicircular canal, the stereocilia bend away from the kinocilium. Now, if you say how this is happening, on one side, because the arrangement is like they are mirror image of one another. So if one, and they are exactly opposite to one another. So if on the right side, if the stereocilia is bending towards the kinocilium, then exactly the opposite happens on the left side, because they are mirror image of one another. So then what happens is, when the stereocilia bend towards the kinocilium on the right side, that means the right semicircular canal is stimulated and the left semicircular canal is suppressed. The discharge rate increases in the right ear from 90 to 300 spike per second, and the discharge rate decreases in the left ear from 90 to 20. So this goes to the brain, to the cerebellum, and then they detect that the right, now the person is looking to the right side. That is why the right canal is stimulated. So the what happens, through the vestibulo-ocular reflex, automatically the eye goes to the left side to maintain the gaze. Now you can do experiment by yourself. You are in your home, just keep a focus on one, say anything hanging in the wall, and just see straight and then move your head to the right side, and you see, to see that image, automatically your eye has to go to the go in a opposite direction. So this is called the vestibulo-ocular reflex. So how it goes and why? Because this is done in the sole purpose to keep the object of interest in the centered in the fovea. Okay. So the vestibular nuclei will interpret the difference in discharge rate between left and right semicircular canal as a movement to right, and therefore trigger the oculomotor nuclei to drive the eye to the left to maintain gaze stabilization. So this is, in a very simplified way, the vestibulo-ocular reflex. Now, see, in order to look, when you are tilting, when you are turning your head to the right, the eye goes to the left. So what happens? The medial rectus of the ipsilateral side, that is the right side, and the lateral rectus of the left side should be stimulated. Not only that, the lateral rectus of the right side and the medial rectus of the left side also should be inhibited to maintain, to have a very nice movement of the eye to the left side. So that is also a part of vestibulo-ocular reflex. Okay. Now what happens when the okay, and just when okay, this uh, okay, I'll just tell you. Now, when what happens when your right side, the all the when you're looking onto the right side, no, there is the right semicircular canal, the horizontal canal send information uh, through the vestibular nerve into the, mainly into the medial vestibular nuclei. Although it goes to all the vestibular nuclei, but most commonly to the medial vestibular nuclei. So from the medial vestibular nuclei detects the change in position of the head to the right. And then what it does, it immediately sends information to the opposite side abducent nerve, to the opposite side, not this side, to the opposite side abducent nerve, and that is the to stimulate the lateral rectus. So this information from the right side to the left abducent nerve goes via the medial longitudinal fasciculus. So through the medial longitudinal fasciculus, it goes from the right side to the left abducent nerve. So the left abducent nerve again in turn stimulates the right oculomotor nerve, so which controls the medial rectus. So this is like a circuit. So vestibular nerve medial to the medial vestibular nuclei, from medial vestibular nuclei to opposite side abducent nerve, abducent nuclei. From abducent nuclei it goes to the contralateral lateral rectus, and then also from the abducent nuclei another pathway comes through the also through the medial longitudinal fasciculus to the ipsilateral or oculomotor nuclei. So this oculomotor nuclei controls the medial rectus. Did you follow what I say?
Yes, sir.
Now, huh?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Are you follow
Yes,
what
sir.
I said now?
Yes, sir.
You need,
Yes, sir. Yes.
you could follow, no? Huh?
Yes, sir.
So this is one pathway. So this, see what happens from the stimulus from the semicircular canal going through the Scarpa's ganglion to the vestibular nuclei, going to opposite side abducent nuclei, from the abducent nuclei again communication coming to the ipsilateral oculomotor nuclei. So oculomotor nuclei will direct the medial rectus of the same side and also stimulate the opposite side lateral rectus. Okay. So there is, apart from this, there is another pathway directly from the medial nucleus of the medial vestibular nuclei. It can also directly stimulate the ipsilateral oculomotor nerve also. Directly stimulate the ipsilateral oculomotor nerve nuclei and thereby stimulate the ipsilateral medial rectus. So there are two pathways. One going to opposite side, first to the abducent nuclei. From there, abducent nuclei stimulates the oculomotor nerve. Another pathway is goes to the medial nuclear ventricular vestibular nuclei. From there, the ascending pathway of deters, through that it comes to the ipsilateral oculomotor nuclei, and then it stimulates the medial rectus. Okay. Now there are three types of rotationally induced eye movement: horizontal, vertical, and torsional. So each of the 6 pair of eye muscle must be controlled to produce the desired response. So see, whatever response occur, there are pairs of eye muscle. So the pair which are complementary should be stimulated and the antagonistic muscles should be inhibited. So both should occur simultaneously for smooth movement of the eyeball. It is not that only the complementary muscle, if they are stimulated, then it will lead to a good vestibulo-ocular reflex. No way. The antagonistic muscle also should be suppressed. So the vertical semicircular canal and saccule, they help in the vertical eye movement. So now I have written, it is written here vertical. You add saccule also. They are responsible for controlling vertical eye movements. The horizontal canal and utricle, they control the horizontal movement, and the vertical semicircular canal and utricle, they control the torsional movement. So because see now torsional movement, how it is possible? Because of the position of the canal, individual canal. Now you see, we are saying horizontal canal, but it is not absolutely horizontal. Rather, it makes an angle of 35 degrees. So vertical means they are not at 90 degree, but they are little more than 90-degree angle. So it is not. So thereby they can detect all the extra movement like the torsional movement also, and even the horizontal movement also can be detected to some extent by the vertical semicircular canals. Now you can see these are the contracted eye muscle and the relaxed. So these are the agonist muscle and this is the antagonist muscle. So agonist is ipsilateral medial and contralateral lateral rectus. So the antagonist is ipsilateral lateral rectus and contralateral medial rectus. So I think in last class I had told you about the interneurons and how the inhibitory fibers control the control the firing and also how they help in suppressing the uh, antagonistic muscle. So this is by the help of interneurons which are present within the vestibular nuclei. And when what happens is, suppose let us consider the right side. So when the right side person turns the head to the right side, no, the oculomotor nerve on the right side is stimulated. So and then what happens? There is also inhibitory nucleus, inhibitory cells inside the vestibular nuclei. So this inhibitory area they fire and they inhibit the ipsilateral lateral rectus. So ipsilateral lateral rectus so is inhibited. So and also when the contralateral lateral rectus is stimulated, it inhibits the contralateral medial rectus. So thereby, what it does, it fine tunes the movement of the eyeball. So you just remember that for a very fine movement of the eyeball, these not only the the agonist muscle should be stimulated, but the respective antagonist muscle also should be suppressed. Okay, now this is. Now central projection of peripheral vestibular system. Now then this is regarding the vestibulo ocular reflex, which is very important. And then like that you have the vestibulospinal and the vestibulocholic and the even you have the vestibulo autonomic system. They also help. Now the vestibulospinal reflex. Is mainly through the medial and lateral vestibulospinal and medial and lateral reticulospinal tract. They help in maintaining the they are the efferent pathway for vestibulospinal reflex. And the principle everywhere is the push and pull principle. So that principle is same for whole vestibular system, and that is how you maintain enough your control of the body. Now let us say, for example, I ask you to stand with 2 feet on the ground. Then I ask you slowly to lift 1 foot. So what happens when you lift 1 foot? No, you the body balance you don't have that easy. It's not that easy to balance the body. So how the balance is maintained? The balance is maintained by proprioceptions coming from the foot, from the joints, okay, and then goes into the processed by the vestibule and then sent into the cerebellum. So cerebellum it is processed there and then through the vestibulospinal or reticulospinal tract. Then the muscle tone is affected. The head, the neck muscle, and the extensor muscles of the back, lower limbs are all the different pathway. So thereby what happens, they maintain the tone of the muscle and try to strike a balance between the extensor and flexor muscles of the body. Okay, so that is the vestibulo-spinal. And then the autonomic part, suppose let us say you are lying down and suddenly you get up and stand. The moment you get up now and stand, there is a lot of changes. Like what happens ki your the position of the body has changed. That is number one. Number two is when you stand now, around 800 ml of blood is pooled in the lower limb and abdomen by gravity. So that is immediately detected, and then what happens is the vestibular autonomic system takes over, and the reflex, the latency period is almost 0.4 second. So immediately what happens is the uh, heart rate is increased, cardiac output increases. So this is a reflex response. Thereby, what it does by increasing the heart rate and cardiac output, it maintains the perfusion of the vital part of the body, and also the contraction. There is a vasoconstriction, and that results in squeezing out those 800 ml of blood back into the heart. And if this does not happen, then you will have a syncope. People, because the cardiac output, obviously, if it is reduced, then obviously you will have a syncope attack. Okay, so for vestibular nuclei, already I have told you: superior vestibular nuclei, medial, lateral, and descending. So from there, several projections are found to the oculomotor nuclei, the lateral and medial vestibulospinal tract, the vestibulocerebellum, mainly to the flocculus and nodulus, parapontine reticular formation, the nucleus prepositus hypoglossal, and nucleus tractus solitarius. So, and then all this from there to the parieto-insular vestibular cortex. So there, the processing of the information occurs. So that is this is the primary vestibular area in the cerebral cortex. Okay. So this is very important. The vestibulocerebellum, where the information goes to the flocculus, nodulus, insula, uvula part of the cerebellum. So where all the information are processed, and then the from the cerebellum the feedback comes via the efferent pathway. So upon head rotation to one side, denoted by ipsilateral side, the ampulla of ipsilateral horizontal canal is stimulated, followed by immediate increase in firing rate of neurons proportional to the velocity of head turn. This also we have talked. These signal project mainly to ipsilateral medial vestibular nuclei. I had told you, but other parts of the vestibular nuclei are also involved. So this is the vestibulo-ocular reflex, again for your benefit. From there, the axon decussate onto the contralateral abducent nucleus, which innervate the lateral rectus of contralateral eye through the sixth nucleus. So accessory pathway, the interneurons of contralateral abducens nucleus project through the medial longitudinal fasciculus to the ipsilateral medial rectus, and then that supply the oculomotor nerve to the oculomotor nucleus, which supplies the medial rectus. So this drive both eyes to rotate towards the sides opposite to direction of head to stabilize the image on the retina. So the basic requisite is to stabilize the image on the retina. Am I clear till now?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now here you can see from utricle the information has come, into the vestibular nuclei. Okay, so from here, this is the first order neuron, and then through from this vestibular nuclei, the second order neuron starts. See here, one set goes to the cerebellum through the vestibulocerebellar tract. Then see here, the information from this vestibular nuclei goes to the opposite side along the medial longitudinal fasciculus to sixth, fourth, and third. So here also third, fourth, and sixth. So ipsilateral as well as contralateral also it goes, and then it goes into the parieto-insular cortex also. And from the cerebellum also the information comes back into the vestibular nuclei, and from there the efferent via the vestibulospinal tract, the medial one and lateral one, and then to the effector part, effector organ. So the effector organ, what are the effector organ? In case of vestibulo-ocular reflex, it is the extraocular muscles, and in case of vestibulospinal reflex, it is the neck muscles mainly and the paraspinal group of muscles. So these are the effector organs. So this I have already told you. I did not enter this, then you will be more confused actually. So already we have discussed vestibulo-ocular reflex. This is not for you gaze holding. The cervico-ocular reflex is not very much well established in human beings, and is quite unreliable and unpredictable. And it is seen in cases where the receptors are there in the neck, where you fix the head and rotate the body, and then causes nystagmus. So particularly in cases where they have this peripheral vestibular system is not working properly, in those cases this cervico-ocular reflex is prominent and powerful. Otherwise, it is quite unreliable and unpredictable. Now, another thing I'll about the vestibulo-ocular reflex. Before I have already told you this is. Have you seen a pigeon or a bird walking? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Have you seen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Acha. Uh, what is what is the striking thing you saw when you see a pigeon walking on the road? Huh? What is the most striking thing you observe? Can anyone tell me? Anwar, you are there?
Yes, sir.
Anwar is not. Anwar,
Sir, eyes, the
there.
pigeon walks with eyes sing to road sides, I mean, lateral sides, sir.
And what about the head?
Head moves
Have
to,
you seen?
I
Have
mean,
you seen the head of the pigeon? The head of the pigeon also will be moving like this. They will be
yes,
moving
sir.
their head. That is called as a head nystagmus. You in human beings you don't see, but you've seen in birds. And if you go home and closely observe some bird walking, you see most of them they move their head. So this is nothing. This is called as a head nystagmus, and this is done to for gaze fixation only. Okay, for gaze fixation, we human beings we don't require it because we have other way vestibular reflex is quite well developed. So we need not bounce our head front and back to fix to do a gaze fixation. But in case of bird, they move the head only to do a gaze fixation to generate the vestibulo-ocular reflex, so that the whatever they are looking for, say a small insect, or the image remains fixed on the fovea. Okay. So vestibulospinal, I have already told you. The extraocular muscles are the effector organ for vestibulo-ocular reflex. while the extensor muscle of neck, trunk, arm, and limbs are those for vestibulospinal reflex. So these reflexes are mediated through projection of vestibular nuclei onto the medial and lateral vestibulospinal tract. So these pathways project to the lower limb and neck muscle to maintain an upright position and balanced locomotion. So the driving input here is mainly gravity detected by the otolith system. So always you are being pulled down by the gravity. So that when you are standing erect or sitting no, I told you the otolith, because the otolith organ, they have the otoconia, and these are calcium carbonate crystals. So they are really heavy compared to the cupula. The cupula is very light, and the otolith is quite heavy. So the gravity has a good effect on the otolith, and that is why they detect the by the pull of gravity. No, the otoconial membrane will shift, and that will help you to detect the position of the head in relation to the gravity or in relation to the body. So each response of peripheral vestibular system starts at the level of sensory epithelium located in semicircular canal and the otolithic system. The vestibular sensory epithelium is formed mainly of hair cell, and there are two types I have shown to you, one and type 2. The type 1 is a flask shape and type 2 is cylindrical. So this is the type 1, this is the type 1 cell you can see here. The hair cell are amphora shaped or flask shaped and have a spherical nucleus, is almost spherical, and surrounded by a chalice like afferent nerve ending. So this is the afferent nerve ending. Whole chalice, or like you can say another covering. The type 2 hair cell are more cylindrical. Can you see? It's more cylindrical and contain a cylindrical nucleus. Although in picture they look roughly the same, but a little bit more cylindrical, and have a bud-shaped afferent. So see the afferent here, and different nerve endings located at the distal end of the cell. So just like you have type 1 and type 2 cells in the cochlea, same you have type 1 and type 2 cells in the vestibular system. Only thing which is deficient is the cochlea does, the kinocilium is deficient in cochlea, in the cochlea it is there, and in the vestibule also you will find the kinocilium. The hair cell of utricle and saccule are embedded in a gelatinous layer impregnated with crystals of calcium carbonate called the otolith or otoconia. So already I have told you about that. Hair cell in the horizontal segments are excited by flow of endolymph towards the utricle. It is called utriculopital. Now, another thing about the semicircular canal is they detect angular acceleration. Now, suppose if you are rotating at a constant speed, if the speed is constant, no, then after a period of 1 minute, no, the semicircular canal are not activated. Because why I'll tell you. Can you see my hands? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Can you see them? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Now see, a person is rotating like this on the all right, like from in a say in a clockwise direction. Say, let us put it in clockwise in a merry-go-round. So it moves like this. Okay. Now when they are moving like this, no, initially there will be a what you say a lag phase of the endolymph that will drag the cupula, and then once the endolymph movement has started, then the cupula will be again, if there is acceleration, the cupula will go in the opposite direction, and then on attaining a constant speed, the cupula will come back to the midline. Can you follow it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You see, cupula When there is a initial acceleration, then what happens due to inertia of rest, the endolymph lag behind. So that will it will be it will assume that as if the endolymph is flowing in the opposite direction. So then the cupula will be deflected in one direction, and then when the endolymph moves along with it, then cupula is deflected in the opposite direction, and then there is also stimulation. And then when you attain a constant speed, no, the cupula will come back to the center. So when the cupula comes back to the original position, no, there the stimulation stops. Brain does not perceive anything unless and until you decelerate. You got my point? Unless and until you decelerate. Now, like what happens? Suppose you are moving in a merry-go-round, and when suddenly you jump out of merry-go-round, you have a severe head reeling and you tend to fall down. Why? It is because that movement is still there, perceived by the because of the movement of the body has stopped moving, but the endolymph is still moving inside because of inertia of motion. So then what happens is that causes stimulation of the deflection of the cupula and leading to stimulation of the canal, and thereby you have this sensation of vertigo. So the organization is the basis of Ewald's first law, which states that head and eye movement always takes place in the plane of canal being stimulated and in the direction of endolymph flow. So Ewald's second law is this one. The utriculopital stimulates the horizontal canal, and the utriculofugal stimulates the vertical semicircular canal. So these are the Ewald's second law. This is the first law. So the head and eye movement always takes place in the plane of canal being stimulated and in the direction of endolymph flow. So these are the you can see the otolith membrane having a lot of calcium carbonate crystal on it, and the hair cells of otolith organ are located at the macula. The tips of this hair cell are embedded in the otolithic membrane. This is gelatinous mass covered with calcium carbonate crystal. Okay, so that is why it is called otolith or otoconia. So then how this the mechanotransduction, which is almost very similar to what we have discussed when we talked about physiology of hearing. So displacement of stereocilia towards kinocilium stretches the tip link, which increases the ion permeability of the channel, resulting in influx of cation, mainly sodium and calcium, thus depolarizing the hair cell. Now I told you the hair cell, no, the hair cells are bathed in endolymph, which has very good what you say concentration of potassium. So thus when the displacement of stereocilia occur towards kinocilium, these channels they open up, and then immediately the potassium and calcium enters into the cell, and now the cell becomes positive because these are all positive charge, K plus Ca2 plus, they are positive charge. So now the cell becomes positive, so this leads to depolarization of the hair cell. So and then displacement of stereocilia away from kinocilium shortens the tip links, and this results in closure of the transduction channel and hyperpolarization of the cell. So when this sodium and calcium enters into the cell, no, they become more positive, and the cell become more positive, and that leads to what you say the neurotransmitters are released near the base, and then the glutamate, and that leads to stimulation and generation of a impulse. So this is not required actually. This is the, you can see this is the tip links. Okay, and calcium entering the stereocilium binds directly to the intracellular site located on the channel. So you can see here, this is the calcium binding site. Okay, this configuration promotes channel. This is not required for this, won't be too much for you. So just causes of childhood vestibular symptoms. And there are a lot of them. Condition with hearing loss, maybe otitis media with diffusion. Cholesteatoma with fistula is a very common thing. Temporal bone trauma, barotrauma leading to perineal fistula, Meniere's disease, etc. And metabolic condition like hypothyroidism also, drug-induced ototoxicity. This is a dehiscent superior semicircular canal syndrome. So condition where there is normal hearing, motion sickness, basilar migraine. BPPV is a quite common condition, benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, and intracranial causes like meningitis and multiple sclerosis and Lyme disease. This affects the midbrain area and brainstem, so thereby causing even what you say the imbalance and sparing the hearing. And acute cerebellar ataxia, and then syncopes and arrhythmias, posterior fossa tumors. So now, if a patient comes to you with vertigo as an isolated symptom, so first thing is vestibular neuronitis or disseminated sclerosis. So like multiple sclerosis. So here the hearing is normal, and some drugs like aminoglycosides and labyrinthine sedatives, sinargine, norethistérone or furosemide, another potassium sparing diuretic. As a this is a loop diuretic, aminoglycosides. So these cause aminoglycosides can also cause hearing loss as well as furosemide. So they can cause hearing loss, but not with disseminated sclerosis and not with vestibular neuronitis. Where you have a triad of vertigo, deafness, and tinnitus, most likely you suspect a Meniere's disease. So, or there may be a case of labyrinthitis, labyrinthine trauma, perineal fistula, maybe iatrogenic, or maybe secondary to cholesteatoma. Acoustic neuroma, a benign tumor of the 8th cranial nerve, mostly involving the superior vestibular nerve. Syphilis, also congenital syphilis, neurosyphilis. Vertigo with signs of intracranial disease, mostly as CNS neoplasm or posterior inferior cerebellar artery thrombosis or vertebrobasilar ischemia. So in this you will have also features of intracranial disease. So normally when a patient comes with vertigo, we don't have electron here, but you can do a very small test where you can ask the patient to put, concentrate on the tip of your hand, move it 30° here and there, and see for any nystagmus. But they are the crude way of examining electronystagmography in the investigation done in management of patient suffering from vertigo and equilibrium disorders. So it shows, it allows the accurate measurement of various nystagmus parameters like slow phase, amplitude, frequency, duration, fast phase, total number of beats, latency, etc. So this calorie test I will take up in the next class, and rehabilitation. Why? Because we have to tell all these things. But Again, coming back to the nystagmus, you can say there are two types: a peripheral and a central nystagmus. You should know now. So, peripheral nystagmus occurs due to any pathology in the peripheral system, like in the vestibule or sorry. And central nystagmus occurs mostly above the vestibular, at the level of vestibular nucleus, or above it in the cerebellum or somewhere. So the peripheral nystagmus, there are lots of striking difference actually. I'll point out a few. It is there in your book. You can see the latency. So latency is there in a peripheral nystagmus. Like if suppose there is a right canal pathology, the moment you turn the head to the right or keep the right canal at a lower level, when you are doing a calorie test, it doesn't start off immediately. There is a few seconds gap, and then the nystagmus starts. So that is the latency. Then number two is the fatigability. So if you do it repeatedly, keep the patient in the same position, going onto the right side, then after 3 or 4 attempts, you may not see the nystagmus at all. So fatigability is a feature of peripheral nystagmus, whereas central nystagmus is not fatigable. It is not fatigable, and there is no latency also. The moment you keep the position, in the triggering position, the nystagmus starts. Then direction. So the direction is pretty fixed in a peripheral nystagmus, whereas the direction changing means it indicates a central nystagmus. Then next is these symptoms like associated nausea, vomitings are more common with the peripheral nystagmus, whereas central nystagmus doesn't have such. So, and the peripheral nystagmus, usually they are horizontal and torsional nystagmus, whereas and the direction is fixed. Central nystagmus are mostly vertical, and they can change their direction changing central nystagmus. So these are few of the things which I have pointed out. There are still many more differences you can go through. It is given in your textbook. So when we in the next class we will take up, I will start with the common what examination we do for a patient presenting to you with vertigo. The patient comes to you with vertigo, how you take the history and what examination you do. We'll deal with that in the next class. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Any doubt as of now?
No, sir.
No doubt. So we will do an exam next class. If you don't have any doubt, we'll do exam. So this physiology of equilibrium is actually a very difficult topic, not only for undergraduates but also for postgraduates. So I hope I have made it simple enough so that you can understand how the eye movements are there and how it occurs in opposite direction to the head movements, and what are the central connections of different vestibular, like where the information from where it goes to where, then which part of the brain it goes. uh. So these all I hope I made it clear for you. This is a very nice picture actually. I didn't tell about it. Here you can see, sorry, so example head movement to the left. You can see the head is rotated to the left. That means the eye will rotate to which side? Undergraduates. Anyone? Amarnath is there. Huh?
Yes, sir.
Amarnath tell if head rotates to the head is rotated to right, left side, then eye will rotate in which direction? Eh?
Extraocular left side.
Means head is rotated
Yes,
to left, eye will also rotate to left. That's what you are saying. Hmm?
No, sir.
Okay. This is Sandhya. Someone is there? Sandhya? Sandhya is there? See as I think. Vamsi? Vamsi is there? No. Most of them have put it on and they are not in the room. Gayatri? There or not there. Most of them are not there. But here it is showing that they are there. Alekhya? Alekhya? Hello?
So
Hello, is
actually
it
there
Alekhya?
was a struck in the voice.
Tell me. What happened?
So
You are Alekhya,
actually,
no? Tell.
no, sir. So
Then
actually there was a struck in the voice. They
you
must.
tell your name first. What is
Mansa,
your
sir.
name?
Mansa, sir.
Mansa. You have any doubt?
No, sir. Actually there was a struck in the voice, sir.
Means my voice was not audible to you? My
Yes, sir.
voice.
There was a breakage,
For
sir.
how
Some
much time?
at the
For how
beginning
much time?
it was audible, sir. At the beginning it was audible, sir. But now there was little
Since
disturbance.
means 5 minutes or 10 minutes, which part you could not hear?
Last 5 minutes, sir.
Okay, last 5 minutes, huh? Achha.
Yes.
So this you could hear about the hair cell type 1 and type 2.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I think that the peripheral and central nystagmus the peripheral and central could not hear. Ivan only, na? Switch off the back. Someone please switch off the background noise. Now am I audible to you?
Yes, sir. Now it's clear, sir.
Now it is clear, no?
Thank you.
Okay. Now
Yes.
peripheral
Thank
and
you, sir.
central nystagmus, that one I will just tell you. See, there are two differences. One is the latency. So latency is present in peripheral and absent in central nystagmus. Fatigability is present in peripheral nystagmus, absent in central nystagmus. Okay, direction is fixed in peripheral nystagmus, direction changing in central nystagmus. Peripheral nystagmus is usually horizontal or rotatory type. Central nystagmus is mostly vertical and rotatory type. Peripheral nystagmus pathology lies in the vestibule. In central nystagmus, it lies in the vestibular nuclei or cerebellum, in the midbrain, anywhere. And then the associated symptoms like nausea and vomiting are very much present in the peripheral nystagmus, but they may not be there in the central nystagmus. So these are a few of the differences. There are still other few. I cannot recall all of them. You can go through the book. Okay. So next class we
Yes,
will
sir.
be talking about
Thank you, sir.
how how to assess a patient presenting to you with vertigo. So vertigo, what questions should be asked, and what are the different examination or investigation you will do. Okay, so just hold on away.